Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another Short War video, and today we have an absolute bombshell piece of news that CIA bases have been discovered within Ukraine by some investigative journalists, and they are currently active and supporting Ukraine in their war against Russia. So that is a very big piece of news indeed, and we're also learning that the Slovakians are thinking about maybe sending some troops to Ukraine for an unknown reason. It's not clear if they're going to fight in the war or if they're simply going to show up as support troops. But nonetheless, very big news. And let's go ahead and jump right into our first article of the day, which is from Nexta. And we see here that the CIA chief William Burns secretly visited Ukraine on Thursday, which was about 4 days ago. And this marks his 10th visit to Ukraine since the war began, and is believed to be to reassure Ukrainian authorities who fear that U.S. intelligence will stop helping Kyiv to target Russians because of the blocking aid. And keep in mind, the CIA is not in the business of advertising its true intentions when it does something like this. This is the public reason for visiting Ukraine, which is obviously not the real reason. And we believe we have discovered why he was actually in Ukraine for the 10th time. And in this next post here, we get a good reason why he's probably doing so. And this is from the Euromaidan Press. It says, the New York Times reports that 12 secret spy bases in Ukraine show the depth of CIA support. And the New York Times has revealed the CIA's covert support for Ukraine, secretly training and equipping intelligence officers over 8 years and constructing 12 bases along the Russian border. And this is a bombshell piece of news indeed, because if you've been following this war whatsoever, you'll know that one of the key Russian propaganda points is that, quote-unquote, the U.S. is building biolabs and also CIA bases inside of Ukraine. And they often try to use that as a justification for invading a sovereign country, which in my opinion, that is not even remotely a justification for invading Ukraine and conducting war crimes like Russia has done, simply because there's a CIA base there. Every country conducts intelligence operations like this. Even Russia does it. They have places down in Cuba where they do it. China has places in Cuba, and they may even be closer than that. So to pretend like Russia has a valid reason for invading Ukraine simply because there are CIA bases inside of Ukraine is absolute lunacy. But with that, we're moving on to our next post here, and we have some more details about these secret CIA bases. And this is a post from Nexta, and it says the country, meaning the United States, reportedly set up information interception posts and trained spies to operate in Russia, Europe, Cuba, and other places where the Russian Federation has a large presence. And this cooperation has expanded in recent years, with Ukraine intercepting more information in Russia than the CIA cell itself. And then more recently in 2016, the CIA began creating Unit 2245, which was tasked with capturing Russian drones and communications equipment to then hack into Russian encryption systems. And after the war began, CIA bases became centers for tracking Russian spy satellites and intercepting conversations. So essentially what we're saying here is these bases were in development even before the invasion in 2022 took place. But recently, they've been turning into crucial intelligence bases to help Ukraine learn information about the Russians they wouldn't have otherwise had, to help them launch a defense of their sovereign territory. So this is turned into less of a domestic intelligence operation for the United States and more into a major operation to assist Ukraine in defending off and getting rid of the Russians in their territory. So, moving on to our next post here, we have one from Apex News on Twitter. It says here, several NATO and European Union members are considering sending soldiers to Ukraine on a bilateral basis, says the Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico. And it's unclear why Fico wants to send the soldiers there. He wouldn't say if it was for a military reason or simply a support role. But the fact that it's being discussed openly, a real proposal to send troops to Ukraine, that is a big deal. And I really honestly doubt it's going to get beyond the proposal stage, because sending troops to Ukraine is a major escalation for the West, and we're trying to avoid a wider war breaking out. That's why it's more important we send aid to Ukraine as we speak, instead of taking more drastic actions like this, which could lead to consequences that the West really doesn't want. But with that, we're moving on to our next post here, which goes to the Kyiv Independent. And unfortunately, we are getting some sad news out of Germany. And we are learning that Scholz once again has ruled out the delivery of long-range Taurus missiles to Ukraine. And he says the debate surrounding Taurus missiles is very irritating because he says that the Ukraine's ammunition shortage is a more pressing concern. And I would agree that the ammunition shortage is a more pressing concern. However, there's no need to pretend like we couldn't send the Taurus missiles plus send ammunition to Ukraine. To me, that sounds like political talk. And if they really wanted to send the Taurus missiles, they could have sent them. And with that, we're moving into our next post here, and we've got a very positive piece of news to cover after covering that somewhat disappointing news. And we're learning that Sweden will officially become a NATO member, and Hungary has finally ratified their accession. So first off, I want to welcome Sweden to the NATO alliance. It's really good to have them, and once again, this is a confirmation that NATO is one of the strongest Western alliances that we will ever have to maintain Western security and promote our interests. NATO is a crucial organization, and we must maintain its security and its deterrence abilities in order to ward off the enemies such as China and also Russia. So welcome Sweden, and it's very good to have you. And moving on to our next post here, we have one from Anton Gerashenko, and we're learning some news that the Wagner PMC have returned yet again to the front lines in Ukraine and are currently in the Avdiivka area, according to Ukrainian intelligence. It also says here that Russia is forming a volunteer corps that will consist of 18,000 people, quote-unquote, veterans of the special military operation that is currently in the subordination to Russian Defense Ministry, and these ex-Wagnerites are being used because of their combat experience, and the Wagnerites use the same approach as in Bakhmut last year, with constant assaults and getting results at any cost. So that strategy is also known as the meat grinder strategy, and the Wagnerites are pioneers of that really horrific strategy that typically results in major and huge losses. That typically is a strategy used by forces which don't have a lot of intelligence and a lot of planning abilities, and they simply throw troops at the meat grinder and hope that something sticks. And luckily, that does work in Ukraine's advantage. But once again, the Wagner simply won't go away. They keep returning and coming back in a simply different form, and it's like a bad pest you can't get rid of. Wagner just keeps coming back. But with that, we're moving on to our next post here, which is from Nexta. And have you ever looked for a job where you can show up drunk, spew absolute lies, and show up and live in delusional world? I haven't heard of a job like that yet, especially one that pays $16 million, but Vladimir Solovyev happens to have stumbled across that pot of gold. It says here that according to the Post, he received more than $16 million annually from the Russian state budget, and his job is basically information and ideological warfare. And if you'll notice, he's wearing a Soviet hoodie here, which is communism, actually. But this communist likes the bag. He likes the money, and he's getting $16 million. He was actually going to get a pay raise of $32 million, but the funding remained at the same level, and he didn't get that nice, sweet pay raise that he was looking for. And once again, he's probably using that to buy a lot of booze, a lot of vodka, because he shows up drunk to the studio every day and just rants and rambles about crazy crap. And this guy is an absolute loony bird. And Russia pays him big bucks to get on there and spew that propaganda. And he's really just a pathetic figure all the way around. But now I understand why he left Alabama and went back to Russia, because he wanted to chase that bag. But with that, we're moving on to our next post here, which is also from Nexta. And this is some news about Navalny. And we're learning that Navalny was to be exchanged shortly before his murder. And this information was confirmed by his associate Maria Pevchik. And she says that the humanitarian exchange of political prisoners from Russia for Russian spies began to be prepared 2 years ago. And according to her, all this time, the politician's associates have been communicating with German and American officials, businessmen, and politicians, and the exchange could have taken place a year ago. It also says here she confirmed that Navalny wanted to be exchanged for Russian Vadim Krasikov, who's convicted in Germany. And also Roman Abramovich told Putin about the possible exchange. So this is an interesting revelation indeed, because this indicates that maybe the Russians wanted to halt this exchange by killing Navalny in the prison. And Russia would have quite a motive for doing that, because Navalny would not give up no matter what happened in his crusade against Putin. And Putin knew that if he let him back out, that would once again start up once again. Even if Navalny went to a foreign country, he was going to start his propaganda against Putin once more, and that would severely hurt his regime. So to me, this makes a lot of sense. And even though the Ukrainian intelligence division said the other day that it appeared to actually be a blood clot that killed Navalny, in my opinion, all of the details seem to indicate that Navalny was killed in the prison, and it simply was not a natural cause. So it appears to be exactly what it is. But with that, we're moving on to our last post of the day, which is from Nexta. And this is some news about that Russian pilot, Kuzminov, whose body was found in Spain. And Ukraine says he was using a quote-unquote protection plan when he left Ukraine. And this sounds a lot like witness protection in America. When someone testifies in a criminal proceeding, for example, in a RICO case against a mob or something like that, where there's a big group of people that wants to basically come and assassinate them, they're put into the witness protection program. And this appears to be Ukraine's version of that, and the Russian pilot, the young man Kuzminov, appeared to have been a part of it. And when he went to Spain, he appeared to have contacted his old girlfriend, which is something you cannot do while in a protection program like that. And it basically compromises your entire fake identity. It compromises your cover. And that way, the Russians can get to you and actually conduct the assassination. So it appears that Kuzminov was actually being protected by Ukraine, but his own stupidity led him to get killed. Which, even though it was quite stupid what he did, I hate to hear that because he did defect to Ukraine. He didn't want to fight for the Russians, and he even gave them a helicopter. The young man was simply stupid. It was a bad move, and unfortunately, it was his last move because it cost him his life. But with that is actually our last piece of news for the day, and I hope you found this video informative. Please press that like button and subscribe as well. That helps us get the news out there. And also, if you want to support us financially, you can do so on our Patreon page. You can go over there and sign up, and the link is in the description below, and that greatly helps us out as well. So please be sure to join us again on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern for our War News stream, and we'll see you all in the next one. And bye-bye for now.